Hi, St. Peter's University faculty. This is Library Director Daisy DeCoster. And this video is being created for the 2024 OER Faculty Summer Institute. And this is our third official meeting. I missed most of you online, which was not a bad thing since I had some computer issues, was being set up with a new loaner computer from IT, and because of that, was using a Chromebook. And I actually asked the couple faculty who were able to meet if I could just record this and share it separately. So today I'm going to talk about this issue of citations and attributions, two different ways to really give others credit within academic writing, publishing, but especially in this talk today, I'm gonna talk about how you're going to, as a faculty author, think about citation and attribution in your OER work. We want to give folks credit, and we also want to follow copyright law. And this presentation, the slides I'm using, were developed by several of the slides were adapted from another presentation, Citations versus Attributions, by Quill West, who created this for his work at Pierce College. And it does have a Creative Commons license, which allowed me to adapt some of these slides. So to get started thinking about citation and attribution, you want to consider how these things fulfill different purposes. So think of citations, if they do appear in your work, if you want to use them as fulfilling an academic purpose, and you have a little more flexibility there because of that. Whereas attributions, if you do need them, serve a legal purpose and are really, really crucial to include. Citations are academic in nature. We probably know this because we ask our students to use citations, and they tell readers where our ideas came from, or what research or sources informed our own scholarship. So this is what in library land we talk often about the scholarly conversation that's revealed in academic writing. So we know that, for instance, Mahatma Gandhi derived inspiration from Thoreau, from Thoreau's philosophy, because he cited him. And we, in fact, know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. derived inspiration, and his theories of nonviolence were informed by Gandhi, because Dr. King cited Gandhi's scholarship. So citations are important to lay that bare in some kind of writing, in certain kinds of writing. And we're going to talk more about whether our OER requires that, if you even are using the original ideas of others. So quotes, paraphrases, or ideas that you use from others that might show up in your writing. Those would be characterized as citations. Attribution, differing from citation in copyright law, is the acknowledgement of credit to the copyright holder or author of work. If you are using an attribution in OER, it is usually the attribution is governed by the Creative Commons license given to that work that you're adapting or using. So it is conceivable that you could get permission to use a copyrighted work in a OER. You would have to get written permission if that is a work under copyright. I haven't heard any examples of that where, for instance, a commercial textbook company wants to give up the copyright and let you use it, but it's possible. All the instances I'm aware of are an author such as yourself choosing to adapt either a chapter, a section, or an entire Creative Commons licensed work. So that's normally where the attribution comes into play. So whereas a citation says to your reader, this is where I got the quote from, this is where I'm paraphrasing from, or as we so often see in academic writing, I started my thinking on this concept using the source following this citation. So, something that provided inspiration or started a line of thinking is often served by a citation, because that's what we want to communicate to the reader. In the textbook, we have to sort of decide whether that's appropriate, or even if we're reaching into, research in a textbook. Unlike a citation, the purpose of an attribution is to give credit to the creator for something you're using. So it's not as much to give reference to an idea as in a citation, a quote, or an idea. It's really to give credit for a work. So it relates to this published thing, whether it's a video, an image in this example. It's a you're legally required to attribute the work. So in this case, this example, there was a Creative Commons licensed photograph of a kitty cat with a laptop. And this creator, opensource.com, made a derivative work of it. So added this text to create a meme, an open source related meme. And then they gave that a title. I believe it's if you want a culture of open access, you're going to have to accept LOL cats. And they used the correct license, since the Creative Commons license they were using required a share alike license. And they created this attribution for the original photograph. And signaled that it is a derivative work. So here's some other contrasts between citations and attributions. So citations tend to, they refer to portions of works. We're not citing in original scholarship whole, chapters typically, or whole works. We're not including whole copyrighted or Creative Commons works with a citation. It's referring to ideas, paraphrases, quotes, or portions. Citations serve an academic purpose. Citations protect authors from plagiarism, charges of plagiarism. Citations are usually, the complete citations are usually listed at the end of papers, projects, videos. So usually they come at the end. And they relate to ideas, and you can cite copyrighted works or openly licensed materials. You cite them similarly. And I did want to acknowledge that even though the full citations are usually listed at the end of a paper or project, we do typically have something called an in-text citation, whether it's a parenthetical or a footnote that refers the reader to that full citation list. A little bit of clarification there. Attributions are different. So attributions relate to the redistribution. So you're sharing a significant part of a work. So this might be in terms if you're adapting, for instance, a chapter from an open educational resource, that's a pretty significant part of the work. Or some of you might be adapting entire open access books, and you're just maybe creating unique H5P activities or creating something additional to go with that. So that would be very significant. You need the attribution, not a citation, attribution. Attributions serve legal purposes, so they protect you legally, which is distinct from protecting you from plagiarism. This is why we want to follow the rules of Creative Commons, and also why we don't want to redistribute copyrighted work without permission, because those works, copyrighted works, are all rights reserved, as we know. The full attribution should show up at the same place the work is used. So typically this is, if you're adapting an entire textbook, your attribution is going to appear right up front, right in the front matter of your book. If you're adapting just a chapter, that attribution will appear at your chapter heading, chapter level information. If you need to attribute a Creative Commons image, you do it right underneath the image, or in a video, do it up front. And I have a few examples of this to share. And attributions, in my experience, typically only apply to openly licensed materials, because if we're talking about copyrighted materials, you're really not allowed to use, you're not permitted to redistribute a whole or significant part of the work. So typically we see attributions of Creative Commons licensed materials. So this distinction, I think we all realize pretty quickly, if you're adapting one or more Creative Commons licensed open textbooks, press books in many cases, you need those attributions. But then this distinction might beg the question, do textbooks need citations at all? And this really depends on you, the faculty author. So if and why you include citations, if why, how you include citations is really up to your choice as a faculty author. And considering your academic freedom and also the purpose you want the text to serve. So were there sources that you relied on heavily to create your open educational resource or web book in Pressbooks? I would definitely consider including those in a final reference list. And that would be sort of a source list that appears at the end of your text. You can choose a citation style popular in your discipline. Do you want to include in-text citations to refer to this final source list? We don't always see this in textbooks. If you think about the purpose of textbooks, we're usually trying to convey, instruct students and convey ideas to them. We might not be trying to engage them more deeply in this scholarly communication. We also, as faculty authors, I think may have digested a lot of these ideas to the point that we're not really referring them to directly or even hearkening back to them to inspire our textbook writing. So I think including a list of additional readings or at the end of your textbook would be sufficient. However, if you're writing for a grad student audience, or if you're relying very heavily on sources, you might want to consider including the in-text citations. It's really a stylistic choice for you, and you can look at examples in both Pressbooks or OpenStax or Open Textbook Library. Look at other open textbooks. How do they include references? How do they refer to them? If you do include a direct quote from a source, I think you should include an in-text citation. That's just my point of view as a librarian. So I included that point of view here. Yeah, I would consider looking at other examples to think of best practices. In the past, we've had faculty who publish in Pressbooks who include no citations because the textbook was really relying on their own expertise and knowledge and instruction as a teacher. And then there's some who included quite a robust reference list. So we've seen both, and both are appropriate. It really depends on whether you used source material to inspire and inform your text. So attributions are required when you reuse works created by someone else. If you do, they could be music, pictures, text, video. If they're openly licensed, we want you to use them legally and ethically, and that includes using an attribution. And I wanted to look at a couple websites to do this that will help you build your attribution and also show some examples of what these attributions look like. So when we go to this first website, which is wiki.creativecommons.org, and if you just Google best practices for attribution or Creative Commons attribution, it will take you to this wiki. It gives you a lot of the rules required for a Creative Commons attribution. You should include the copyright notice supplied by the licensor's name, the title of the work, the URL for the work, so people can click directly to it from your attribution, the type of Creative Commons license, and the specific URL to that Creative Commons license, so users can look at the license. Some other information you might want to include in the attribution are the date the work was completed, the date the work was retrieved, the URL for the website where the work is housed, and the extent to which the work was modified. For instance, you might want to say which chapters have been adapted from this work, or whether it's a derivative work, or whether you're simply adapting and cloning the work. So there's a few distinctions there to be made. So the other link I shared here, I'm not going to pull up now in the video, is the Open Attribution Builder from openwashington.org. And this is really the easiest way to create your attribution for your source. It will, basically walk you through just a form, some questions, what type of Creative Commons license, the work you used has. Also, it will ask you authorship, title, all of those things, and it will format a nice attribution for you. And here's just an example of, the type of attribution that you would have. Let's say if you adapted just a chapter of another book. If you're in Pressbooks and you're creating what we've been calling a Frankenbook, so let's say you're using a few different chapters, this would be if you adapted it from an open source geology book, and you would put this right up front in Pressbooks in the chapter text under the chapter description field. And it creates a hyperlink to you. You're asked for this as you use the attribution builder. This chapter is an adaptation of Introduction to Geology, which hyperlinks to the original source. And it lists the authors, and it is used under a Creative Commons license, CC BY and CSA 4.0, actually hyperlinks to the detail of this license on the Creative Commons website. Similarly, if we were going to use, this is a golden retriever I found on Flickr, and it has a Creative Commons license, CC BY 2.0. So this is an example of an attribution statement if you used an image like this in your book. And once again, attribution, unlike citation, we do it right where, or the full attribution, right where the resource is used. So this is Dog, which is hyperlinked to the original by David Locke. We hyperlinked the author because he's a Flickr user with all of his, not author, in this case, the photographer, the creator. Dog by David Locke is used under a CC BY 2.0 license. And here we included modifications to this photo include cropping, just to give an idea to the user of what was modified. If you're creating a video such as this video, in YouTube, we recommend best practices to include the attributions in the about or description section. It's kind of hard with videos sometimes to know where to put this information, but in YouTube, it's called the description section. Any really video streaming site, Vimeo, should have a field like this and include hyperlinks to the originals. You can include hyperlinks in that description field to both the original and the Creative Commons license. And I'm gonna try my best to include my original source for some of these slides in my YouTube description today. So one last thing that bears mentioning, getting back to citations. So we talked a little bit about attributions. If you're using a openly licensed text to build your text, how you can give credit, where you can give credit. But getting back to this reference list, I know that just from our interlibrary loan request this summer, I know a couple of faculty are at least doing a lot of research to inform their process and looking at a lot of sources. So if you're one of those who do feel that you're using a lot of sources to inform your OER and you want to include a reference list, a great tool to format and organize your references and produce them in a nice reference list when you're ready to do so is Zotero. So if you haven't experimented with Zotero and you are interested in gathering references, I encourage you to check it out. It's zotero.org, Zotero.org, and it is a free tool, free to create an account. So definitely check that out. So thanks for watching this video. My last note is that I didn't talk much about public domain materials. So there are some instances where public domain materials are things that are free and openly accessible. They're copyrighted materials, but they've lapsed into the public domain. So in the United States, if they were published prior to 1924, they're now in the public domain, and you do not require, you're not legally required to attribute those, but there are a best practice for citing them. And if you are using public domain materials, let me know. We can talk more about that personally. Other than that, I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I'll be in touch about our next meeting. And please, 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 as always, hit me up, touch base if you have any questions or if you need any support using Pressbooks or creating your open educational resource. And I'll see you, I believe, July 25th at our next meeting online. Thanks so much.